Ross McFarlane from the Hawesville River Rating District Liaison Committee. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having us so late. You must have done something terribly long to be kept in this late. But,
No, we don't mind.
I take the submission as read. And tonight I'm going to focus on a few words. Fair, unfair, equitable, inequitable, serviced, non-serviced, amenity and accessibility. The Hawesville River Rating District was sent a 30th of March dated letter, received 6th of April, to say some pretty massive changes were occurring in the way rates were charged around the whole district, which we don't think is fair and equitable, but we're still in the Hawesville Rating Districts because we already pay a rate to ECAM. So whilst it's seen that we might be paying two rates, the reason this rate has been brought in is probably what I'm going to touch on first. In the submission I've left two options, and the option one, which I think is fair to everybody, is to do nothing at all. This is not broken. Why you need to bring in this wholesale change when you have got 96.3% rating coverage by value and 97.5% rating coverage by volume. That 96 and 97 are serviced areas. People have a conduit, a connection, a pipe or some plumbing to a service. You are bringing in a targeted rate to areas that has no service. So on that basis, if you think that's fair, we actually think it's totally inequitable. I'm sure you'll hear over the next 5 days from a lot of rural folk, particularly from Banks Peninsula, because they are being punished. There's some pretty big increases out there, and based on their capital value. We had a great deal of difficulty getting communication with staff. We sort of saw this coming in your draft report of March 4th, but we didn't have physical area maps of where you were going to bring this global district land drainage rate to. We asked for a meeting on the 14th of March. We finally got a meeting on the 14th of April, 4 days before submissions closed. Speaking with senior rating staff, they said, do not go to council and argue you're paying the rate twice. You are wasting your time, we were told. Essentially, they're saying this is about accessibility and amenity. Everybody in the city benefits by the land drainage rate, we are told. However, in the Hawesville River Rating District, and this is the analogy I've put in the submission, you exit the city, you go into Selwyn, you go down State Highway 75, you head to Akaroa, you go back out of Selwyn and you go back into Christchurch. We pay the rate for that area. We give you that amenity and that accessibility down that corridor. Is it fair that we should pay that rate twice? We say no. This really is a shock to everybody. And if you start to use that analogy, what's next? Will our river rating districts start to charge you for opening Lake Ellesmere? Because that's something you don't pay for presently, but it is of benefit to the city to discharge the water that comes from the Upper Hawesville River catchment area. So you're really going into a line and an area that what's next? Well, the air comes from New Brighton, we'll charge Hawesville for that. It's that sort of scenario. And to take it back to the farming community and charge them, the last thing you want to be doing to the farming community is imposing a rate on them that will see them stop doing some of the very basic work that they do because it's in their nature and their best interest if their tractor's going down a road to clear a drain while they go past it. They're not going to ring and expect it done by city services or whatever. So it's just a totally unfair application, and I ask you to look at option one of our submission. And if you don't, and that's not palatable to you, please ensure that you adopt option 2, which is essentially or not including the Hallsville district. So that's really the 5 minutes really gone. And I've got 9 seconds for questions. 6.
I've got you written here twice though, but
No, it's only once.
sorry.
Have you got a personal one?
Did you have a personal submission as well?
The personal submission, yes. Was
Oh.
that 5 minutes or
No.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
flies long, doesn't it?
no. But there's a second block of 3 minutes for your personal submission. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll not touch on the land drainage rate in my
Yeah.
personal submission. I think I've just covered that.
Yes. Yeah. You
The
have.
personal submission. Take you back to June 25th, 2019. City Council made a resolution to do a full rates review. We've been expecting this for a while. We would have thought that would have engaged with the community and maybe looked at some of those errand rates, and I'm going to bring to your attention the one that causes probably the most upset, and that's the remote rural rebate, where it applies 25% discount to the general rate. This is a subjective rate. You've heard it before. It is inequitably applied. Our last meeting with council senior finance staff basically said to us, if you know of any people that this rate should apply to, could you ring us so we can increase their rate? What sort of policy demands neighbours dob in neighbours on the erection or of a shed, for example, or the removal of stock or the arrival of stock? It is just silly policy. Commercial policy and the 67% premium is applied by the district plan zoning. If you did the same to the rural remote rebate, you would get the same outcome. You would get black and white. You either pay it or you don't. Staff, it's obvious, spend a lot of time on Google, looking down, looking up driveways and finding out what's changed in areas. It really is, it's bad policy, and staff shouldn't have to act on bad policy. I don't know what was brought to you on that, but my submission mentions where you're now changing a property, if it's greater than 20 hectares and it has a connection past it to the sewer, you're now not charging that a residential rate. I'd suggest to you that you want to really look at that, and if that property is able to be subdivided, why would you give that property a 25% reduction in their holding cost when, if it is zoned for residential, it should be bringing and coming into the land market and made into housing? That's not a good piece on that. So there's other points in my personal submission that I take as read, but I'll touch on land sales. The policy of using the LTP to get the community to bring to you reasons or not for holding on to properties is the wrong approach. More so in our Hallsville area, because we are balancing development gifted reserves against ones that we want to hold on to. And I mentioned specifically 46 Nichols Road. It was in the trance of Otatahi Community Housing gifts as the balance for what they lost through their housing insurance portfolio. We were told it was gifted to Otatahi Community Housing Trust. In the meantime, the energy of a play centre looking for a location has been lost, and their funding also has been lost through national property management changes. We had a group of people who were really driven towards getting a new play centre. If we had picked up that land when it was available, it would be built, done, dusted by now. So yes, you really need to engage with the community on each and one of those. Comes back to the kart club also. You're selling land around a motorsport facility, yet you're funding the go-kart club to move to another facility again. So yeah, you need to have a look at the holistic approach there. I touched also on the transfer station, that smelly place over in, you've got land that you own out in Miners Road. Now, Miners Road is the dirtiest, dustiest, holiest piece of ground you can imagine. Its closest neighbour is the Department of Corrections or their pig farm. That is the place for smelling facilities. To me, you should have moved it out there. My personal point of view. Anyway, I've had my 3 minutes, haven't I?
You have.
Any more
and
questions?
Thank you very, very much, Ross. That's much appreciated.
Oh,
Thank
there
you.
was one question, sorry.
It's time.
Oh.
So thank you very much. Thank you. George Forbes.